Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. And with us today, we're very lucky to have live from Cape Town in South Africa. It's Donal O'Neill. How's it going, Donal?
Hey Sam, it's going well.
Oh, good, fantastic to have you here. I mean, it's very timely as well because the first low-carb, high-fat convention has just finished and kind of renamed the old Mutual Health Convention as well. So yeah, anybody that's kind of looking on Twitter and things, it's called the old Mutual Health Convention, I believe now. But that just finished and you presented your latest film, Serial Killers 2 Run on Fat, which is an absolutely fantastic film. I've had the pleasure of having a bit of a preview on that. Absolutely fantastic work again. So first things first, how was this weekend? And then let's get into Run on Fat and what's going on there.
The weekend was remarkable, Sam. I mean, it was a real who's who of the whole foods, low carb, high fat, let's call it movement. Yeah. The quality of presenter was just astonishing. They were coming from all over the world. Asim Malhotra, whom you and I both know well, was one of the stars of the show, and of course everybody was here revolving around the orbit that is Tim Noakes, and the Prof did an incredible job in hosting this remarkable conference along with Karen Thompson, whose idea it was. So it was I think an idea whose time had come, and it really manifested itself quite superbly here in Cape Town, and everybody who came loved Cape Town, of course. So it was just an entirely positive experience for everybody, I think.
Absolutely. I was transfixed by following Jimmy Moore and Emily Maguire from Low Carb Genesis. I just, I was watching their Twitter and Instagram feeds like constantly. It's kind of like all the updates, all the slides and things like that. And as you say, it is like a complete who's who in the LCHF movement. You got Andreas Endenfelt, you have Dr. Asim Malhotra, of course, Professor Tim Noakes, Jay Wortman, Jeffrey Gerber, Dr. Eric Westman, of course, Steve Phinney, who thankfully features very much prominently in your film, Run on Fat, Serial Killers 2. So before we get into the meat of that, let's tell folks about kind of your first film, Serial Killers, and kind of where this whole documentary filmmaking career came from.
Well, maybe you can help me because I'm really not sure where it all came from. But I mean, anybody who's seen Serial Killers will know it was just a personal journey. My dad had a heart attack, and I come from a family of elite athletic men who don't really put on weight, but they seem to become metabolically unhealthy. My very famous uncle became type 2 diabetic, or they understood that he was type 2 diabetic once they pulled him in for tests after my dad's episode. So I just, like many of us, thought, hey, that's interesting, and it's also kind of scary. So I set out to research. It's probably going back about 5 years now to see why that might have happened, and that ultimately led to the crazy idea that I should perhaps make a feature-length documentary about this whole topic, and that became Serial Killers 1, Don't Fear Fat. And it was great fun. It was enormously painful, and it was a big risk, but ultimately it came good, thankfully, and that was down to support from people like your good self all around the world. So the message got picked up and carried along, and the movie did very well commercially as well, I'm glad to say, and it managed to finance the start of Serial Killers 2 Run on Fat, and then we moved to Kickstarter with that again, got a great response, and we're all of a sudden back at the beginning all over again.
Fantastic. Because yeah, for anybody that hasn't seen Serial Killers 1, highly recommend it as a real starting point if you're kind of being introduced to this whole low carb, high fat world. It's a fantastic introduction into this world in terms of what you have to do, and just kind of showing the journey of those 28 days and kind of what usually happens on those 28 days. You tend to get leaner, even though you're not doing as much exercise as you might have once done, and then also your cholesterol profiles improve as well. And as you kind of said just then. This movie enabled you to start the second movie, which is kind of the next level of things. Once you get introduced to this world of low carb, high fat, you get introduced to this whole other community of endurance athletes and elite athletes that are taking up this style of diet within their athletic accomplishments. So let's get into Run on Fat. What's the film about, and what's going on?
Well, you've met Sami Inkinen, world amateur Ironman champion. He, right. As I say, he looks like a movie star, runs like a Maasai warrior, and thinks like Steve Jobs. He's a successful tech entrepreneur into the bargain. Remarkable guy, and again, just it harked back to the power of the internet and social media. And Sami contacted me because he'd seen and enjoyed serial killers, and he wanted to help. So we screened serial killers in San Francisco a little over a year ago, and we got along well. I started to understand more about Sami's motivations and how he lived his life and trained and competed at a world-class level. And then he told me he was going to row across the Pacific Ocean with his wife in a fat-adapted state with no carbs in the boat. So I thought, well, that could be interesting. And he very generously gave us full access to himself, and we put some cameras on the boat, and Sami and his wife Meredith, who's also an endurance athlete, spent 45 days crossing the Pacific and sharing their journey with us. And of course they were advised by none other than Dr. Stephen Phinney, who is just a remarkable person with a remarkable story. And the best thing about what I do now is just getting access to and meeting these people, and I had the honour of introducing both Steve and Professor Tim Noakes at the weekend, and I stood there in front of 500 people wondering how I actually got there, because it was a medical conference. So the world is very strange, but when you make a couple of movies, I don't know, people seem to respond well to the visual stimuli, and they ask you to do things they would never have countenanced asking you to do before. So it's just great fun, and it's magnificent to meet people like Sami doing what he does. And this is a guy who trains probably half as much as other, I would say, professional triathletes, although he's not a professional. He's world class in terms of his times and whatnot, but he's only training 10, 12 hours a week for an Ironman versus the 25 to 30 that the guys at his level would typically be doing. And he does that because he's a businessman, he doesn't have time. Mm-hmm. And his diet, he believes, has allowed him to excel at that particular event. And the movie gets into his training regime as well, because he doesn't train like a typical Ironman either. He uses let's say higher intensity protocols, and he just breaks all the rules, and he does it looking great and doing great, and living very, very well. So his is a great story, and let's not forget that he too was he had got to the point where he was pre-diabetic as a very efficient sugar burner, and he was smashing the carbs as opposed to smashing the fat. And it's a story of health as well as performance, but I think any athlete out there will enjoy it, and to date we've had a fantastic response from those athletes who have seen it. So it's not quite as emotive as Serial Killers 1, but it addresses the questions that athletes have around this particular diet, and there are quite a few of those.
Because that's always the question that people have. They always say, yeah, sure, you lose weight, you get healthier, but can you perform athletically at an elite level on this style of diet? And I think your movie, Run on Fat, which is available on March 1st, I believe, via Yekra. If people go to smashthefat.com/CK2, then they can pre-order it. But in the movie itself, it kind of does chart the journey of Sami, who was on the show about, I think, 10 episodes ago, I forget, but about 10 episodes ago. So if people want to go back and watch it, check it out. But it kind of charts his journey, but kind of in between that, you go visit Steve Phinney at his house, kind of him picking in his vegetable patch and things, and him talking about the actual science of this as well, which is very important for people to understand, especially kind of athletes that tend to be kind of data driven and want to find out the hard facts of this. So what did you kind of find out during that time?
Well, much as Steve Phinney himself found out, what Sami and others are doing now was standard 100 years ago. I mean, the great Antarctic explorers used a food called pemmican to fuel their astronomical feats of endurance, and that was again that's a food that was created by the Native American Indians in actual fact, because it fueled their fur trading missions, because they had to take all the food with them, so it needed to be sustainable, it needed to stay edible for 3 to 6 months, and it needed to sustain their energy levels. So pemmican is a food that was originally made by rendering the fat on the buffalo and pummeling the muscle meat, mixing it all up together, throwing in maybe a couple of berries or a few spices, and creating this solidified bar type food. And you know, what Sami and Meredith did in their journey was kind of replicate some of the great expeditions of 100 plus years ago, because they were kind of really stripped bare out there. It was unsupported, and they had to bring all their own food with them. So what we found was that this is not new. It was something that humankind was very familiar with, and as with a lot of the issues around health today, we lost our way probably 50, 60 years ago, and these foods started to disappear as an energy source in favor of the, let's say, the sugar and carb-based interests. And I think there's compelling evidence that for any event 2 hours plus, it's just a no-brainer. I mean, there really isn't any discussion to be had. Mm-hmm. But perhaps more interestingly for me, I realized in the making of Serial Killers that when I got the slight reduction in body fat, even though I started out very lean, and a slight increase in muscle mass, I knew as a former high jumper that there was some type of performance benefit in there for athletes. And 3 weeks ago, I was very fortunate to get invited out to the training ground of the LA Lakers. When you hear that Kobe Bryant is on this and some of the other players, and you get talking to the conditioning coach and you understand what it's doing for these athletes at that level, then it all starts to stack up. This is not just for endurance and ultra endurance athletes, although it is a no-brainer there, but for athletes who are engaging in more explosive sports. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that over the weekend I just met someone, I can't tell you the team, but one of the most famous soccer clubs in the world have their players on this diet. Nice. They're not talking about it yet, and they said they might, but they've invited me to come see them, and that's the type of page turner that could really put this on the map, because athletes are powerful carriers of messages, and I was in that sports marketing industry for a long time. I wrote some of those contracts to have superstar athletes and endorse Coke and Gatorade, to my shame, but they do that for a reason, and hopefully the more that these athletes come forward, I think the message will become clearer and much more succinct and accepted by young people in particular. So there's hope in the hills.
Absolutely, it's fantastic to see the development of this and the evolution. And thankfully, you had an opportunity to do a screening at the Old Mutual Health Convention at the weekend to like 450 doctors and medical students or whoever the audience was kind of made up of. What was the reaction like afterwards?
Well, thankfully it was very good. I had my hard hat on in case it didn't go down too well, but and you never really know, because the movie's very fresh. But yeah, they loved it, and the athletes. There was a world mountain bike champion in the audience who came straight up to me afterwards, and she loved it. And they approached and they started to tell me some of their stories, which is always, I mean, that's for me. I just love being around athletes and sports people, so it's fantastic to mix and mingle with them. And then the conditioning coach that I mentioned was one of the big soccer teams approached me. So that was really heartening to know that you're getting the message out there. And then Steve Phinney told me that Jeff Folek had seen the movie and is now already using it with his students. And he told Steve that he's able to, it communicates, in some respects better than he has been able to, because I guess some people just respond better to some mild form of entertainment than they do to these fabulous scientists presenting data. So I think he's probably onto something there, and I hope that that's the case for a lot of athletes and a lot of people who perhaps don't enjoy sitting down digesting the real hardcore science, but they want to have enough to make a difference.
Absolutely superb. So the big question is there going to be a Serial Killers 3? Are we seeing a trilogy here?
A trilogy? Yeah, I think we're going to have to try and beat the Rocky movies. I'm not sure how many.
You've got to. I want to see a whole anthology. I want to see at least 5.
Well, the funny thing is, every time we do this, something else crops up, and it was when we toured Serial Killers 1. That's when Sami Inkinen came into my life, and then without him, we would not have met Steve Phinney. We would not have had access to these incredible people. And my first boss was Mark McCormick, the great sports marketing agent, and his advice was always, if you just find people who are way better than you and kind of give them a big hug, you'll do okay. Get them in around you. And it's happening again with this, because we've stumbled into something quite remarkable, which is the application of ketogenic diets for cancer patients. And there's research happening out of Florida in the US, and it's been financed by the US military and the Navy SEALs, and they've somehow or other crossed into the realm of cancer treatment, and they're discovering that ketones just appear to have some remarkable qualities. And the Navy SEALs are investigating their use, in their words, to create the perfect warfighter. They don't muck around, but nor do they wait on double-blind crossover trials. I mean, they just want stuff that works. So they're ahead of the game, and what they've seen with some cancer patients are promising signs that a ketogenic diet, in conjunction with some of the traditional therapies, it seems to equip the healthy cells to become more resilient to treatments like chemo and radiation, and the cancer cells, it appears to weaken, because of course cancer cells rely pretty much on glucose for energy and don't have that metabolic flexibility that healthy cells in the body have. So ketones are, I think, going to become the star of many a show moving forward, but the research on that in terms of making a public appearance is probably about 4 years away, the scientists believe. So they're seeing it, and they're witnessing benefits on an anecdotal basis. But Bruce Fordyce, the great ultra runner, makes a great comment in Run on Fat, and he said, these anecdotes are becoming statistics amongst athletes, because what he himself experienced and what he knows other athletes, predominantly runners, are experiencing is quite remarkable. So we're only at the tip of the iceberg, and it would be nice to maybe try and attack something that touches everybody, because when we just wrapped Serial Killers 2, the production of it, I lost my godfather to cancer, so it's a very personal subject for me again. So it would be enormously challenging, but it would be a big one. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be fantastic to kind of go across into there, because that's where the next stage of this is. And we were speaking to Professor Richard Feynman a few weeks back, and he was saying, that's going to kind of be the next part of the low carb movement. There's becoming a real kind of movement in terms of obesity and diabetes treatment, along with athletic endurance and athletic performance. But next, I will just wait for that police car to go past. But next is the arena of cancer, and because it touches, and it's almost 1 in 2 people get cancer now, I believe, in the UK at least. And it's absolutely shocking, and we can do things now that will help prevent it, but then also kind of in the therapy of it, there's a lot of interesting research into ketogenic diets. So that'd be fantastic to see, but I suppose we wouldn't see that for quite a few years yet, would we?
Well, if we get on it, we'll probably get on it pretty fast. There's no point in hanging around, because it's all of the research. I mean, it's been 5 years up to this point. So some of the key people in that area in the US flew over to meet us at our worldwide premiere in San Francisco, and you know, they like what we've done so far, and of course we finance these movies ourselves. So every time you do that, you take a big risk. So you know, if we got some financial support, maybe we could do it a little bit quicker. But it's something that I've certainly got an appetite for. I think it's a remarkable story, because it goes all the way back to Otto Warburg and a Nobel Prize in the 1930s, and some of the great German scientists of the era. So it's a remarkable story, and in the same way that you know, the fat sugar fork in the road, there's a DNA to metabolic fork in the road for cancer, because when they discovered the DNA process, that just utterly sidelined Warburg's work, and there's been tens of billions of dollars have gone into cancer research that have delivered very, very little. If it was a business, the ROI would have had anybody shut it down a long time ago. So this, particularly the completion of the Human Genome Project recently, they thought might open the door to some fantastic cancer treatments, and all it's done, unfortunately, is confuse them even further. So they've kind of put the hands up now, and some of the key researchers are now turning back to Warburg's research on some metabolic type approaches, and it's going to get interesting. It's going to get very interesting, but again, we always need a glimmer of hope, and in that there appears to be something. So it would be an interesting journey to see just what that could be.
Fantastic. So yeah, we'll be definitely looking out for Serial Killers 3, The Cure to Cancer, or something along those lines. Maybe not so as that, but you know, something along those lines. Yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Donal. We did have a couple of questions from Larry Diamond, who I'm sure you've seen on Twitter and Facebook. But you've pretty much answered all of his questions, which are along the lines of this type of eating works for endurance athletes, but what about explosive sports? You've kind of addressed that. And then do you see a turning point in all of this now? Do you think that this weekend was perhaps the turning point that brought it all together?
Now, I think it'll be death by 1,000 cuts. I don't think there's going to be a cataclysmic event, but no. I think it's kind of, I compare it to, you know, when did you stop believing in Santa Claus? You don't exactly remember the day, it just kind of gets there and happens. But I think that's what will happen. But just to go back to one point on, is this only for the endurance athletes? Tim Noakes makes the point in the movie, and he made the point even more progressively this weekend. I think athletes need to look at their entire career, because his belief is that the high carbohydrate diets are shortening careers. The athletes that are benefiting most at the moment are typically in their 30s. And whether they're explosive athletes or they're endurance athletes, what they're finding is that levels of inflammation are going down, recovery is increasing, and there's almost like it's a stay of execution for the older athletes. They're able to continue to compete and last longer at an elite level. And to a professional athlete in a certain code, that's worth millions of dollars, and that's their motivation. So that's happening, and we know that the likes of powerlifters benefit from this. Jeff Volek himself is a powerlifter. Dominic D'Agostino, who is doing the research in Florida I referred to with the SEALs and NASA and whatnot, actually holds a world powerlifting record. And they know that split-second effort is not hampered by, and it may actually be benefited or benefit from a ketogenic approach, because they need to make weight and retain power. So there's somewhere in between. Will it work for Usain Bolt? No, but we don't really know exactly where the parameters are, but there's something in it for everyone. And Tim Noakes would say that there is no athlete in the world who needs more than 200 grams a day of carbohydrates. So that's quite a statement.
No, it's quite a statement, and it's fantastic to hear. The world's most prestigious sports scientist is saying that. Literally going back on his word from like 15 years ago in the law of running, and it's fantastic that he's following the data along with everybody else at the Old Mutual Health Convention. It's an incredible time that we're living in at the moment when it comes to low carb, high fat nutrition, and it's really going to be interesting over the next few years to see where this whole movement goes, and hopefully the health convention that you were just at will be making it over to London, that I saw on social media, so fingers crossed for that. And would you be able to make it over to London next year?
Well, I hope to make it over before next year. I mean, I'm hoping we can. I'd really love to screen the movie before the London Marathon or some of the big endurance events, because I think there'll be a willing audience. We've got Sami Inkinen coming down to Cape Town. He's going to host a screening prior to the Cape Epic, which is the Tour de France of mountain bike races. So we'll have several hundred endurance athletes, I'm sure, turning up for that one with Professor. We'd like to send the movie on tour around some of the world's greatest endurance events, so hopefully we can make that happen.
Fantastic. As always, Donal, I'm here to help in London, so if you need anything, any help at all setting things up, I'm always happy to give my services.
Well, much appreciated. I mean, the last time we took Serial Killers a year ago to the UK. It was unbelievable, the coverage we got, and that was down to yourself, and it was much appreciated.
Oh, it's no problem, mate. No problem at all. My pleasure. Well, fantastic. And there's only one more thing to do before you got to go, and that's to hear a smash it out from Donal O'Neill. So on the count of 3, I want to hear you shout, smash it out to the camera. So 1, 2, 3.
Smash it out.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. Well, everybody go check out the trailer for Serial Killers 2 at smashthefat.com/CK2. You can then pre-order before the March of 1st. And then from there, you can go to their website, runonfatmovie.com. Follow them on Twitter, which is Serial Killers 13, and then on Facebook, which is if you just search for Serial Killers Movie, then it will come up there as well. Anything else that you wanted to point people to at all, Donal?
I ran into Daryl Edwards, the fitness explorer, on the weekend.
Excellent.
And
my good old buddy.
He told me that you're way heavier than me.
Oh, really? Well, we kind of knew that.
We were just discussing how you're the only man who appears leaner on screen than in real life. So I want to tell your viewers that you're actually built like an Olympic 400-meter runner and very deceptive. But anyway, Daryl had me on his shoulder, and he sends his regards. Oh,
fantastic! Daryl's such a character. He's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it is. It's very true. I look lighter than I actually am. I'm a solid 90 kilos, 200 pounds, of 14.5 stone for anybody that works for old money. Yeah, it's all good in the hood. It's all good in the hood. Fantastic. Well, thanks again for your time, Donal. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to see you over here in London once you do get over here. And yeah, keep me in the loop as always.
Looking forward to it, Sam. See you soon.
Fantastic. All right, mate. Take it easy.
See ya.